speaking of making of movies, let's get to SNL. Let's go to Saturday night. Let's talk about Rotten Tomatoes IMDb synopsis. Then we'll get into the review. So Saturday night is clocking in at 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, certified fresh. Audience score hitting an 88%, even higher than the critic score. IMDb, this is a 7.4 out of 10. Synopsis reads, tensions run high as producer Lorne Michaels and a ferocious troupe of young comedians and writers prepare for the first broadcast of Saturday Night Live on October 11th, 1975. So, Ricky Flex, before we get into initial reactions, I think we should talk about our relationship with Saturday Night Live. All right. So what does it look like you growing up? Were you watching Saturday Night Live? Right. What's your relationship with it today? All right. We grew up in the same household, so I know what your relationship is, but tell the audience.
Not a big relationship. Not a big relationship. Watching sports and movies. That's the gig here at the TDI household. SNL I like, I just don't love because the hit rate is it's literally 50-50 chance to me, whether it gets good or bad. And if it's good, I can check it on YouTube. I'm in that era. I'm in the YouTube era. I'm still on the younger side, under 30. I see a good clip, throw it on YouTube. Or I hear about a good clip, I throw it on YouTube. Not necessarily I'm staying up to watch Saturday night, or I'd rather go see a movie or watch a TV show.
Okay. So I'm with you where I don't watch it today. It's very much like I will see clips afterwards the next morning, Instagram, Twitter. I think social media has transformed Saturday Night Live, right? In a number of different ways, where it's not only where people, because it's so hit or miss, they'll just catch it on a clip. And Saturday Night Live has been consistently, hey, this is the best one. Let's put that. Let's try and go viral. And then hopefully we'll get someone to tune in next week. Or they'll go back on Peacock and they'll watch the latest episode. I also think the talent on SNL isn't what it used to be, where it was a Kickstarter for so many different comedic stars. And now I can name maybe one person in the cast, only one person in the cast. I can name Kenan Thompson, and everyone else I don't know. And that's because Kenan Thompson has been there since we were young. We were growing up. I think the longest tenured member.
Yeah, 03.
The longest tenured member, I think, in the history of SNL. And he's not even that funny. I think he's gotten better over the years, to be honest, right? I always associate him with Mighty Ducks, but a lot of people, he's SNL.
Good burger.
But I think also social media, what it did is that a lot of people that are super talented, they found out they don't need SNL as a Kickstarter. They can have their own YouTube channel. They can make their own sketch show. They don't have to use SNL as a stepping stone to get to a higher level. It's not what it used to be. It's not like it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, right? So when we were growing up, by the way, like SNL, what it looked like, I think the main players, Sudeikis was big when we were growing up. Sudeikis was big. Bill Hader was big when we were growing up. Tina Fey, Kristen Wiig. I think that is, and Andy Samberg, the Lonely Island guys. That's like the era we grew up in. And I think that's like one of the last memorable like casts of SNL, you know? And Justin Timberlake was a great host back in the day. I used to watch his skits all the time.
Fallon.
Lonely Island, him and Fallon in his last couple of years before he had the Tonight Show. But do you agree, like, there aren't many people that like have become notable figures recently from SNL?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, I think what you said, that era, Samberg, Sudeikis, Hader, all ending in 2012 and or 2013. And same with Kristen Wiig. Like, she ended her run there as well. Obviously did Bridesmaids, I think, the next year, so which she co-wrote. So it's just like, that was kind of the last, like, these are stars, or about to be stars. And those hit rates were a lot higher than now. Because now it's like, the only things that get really hits are either the pre-recorded stuff with the host. You know, like, I don't know, I remember Adam Driver did a funny one recently, or last year with for his promo for Ferrari. The Rock, I think, has hosted, and he had a funny one. Like, there's a few that I'm thinking of in my head. I can't even remember what they are, though. Like, that just shows you it's kind of come down versus I could probably name 10 things off the top of my head that Sudeikis did, on SNL. So I think it's just kind of like not as memorable. It's pretty forgettable. And this movie is also kind of forgettable, and we'll get to that too. But I agree with you. Not as much of the all-star cast.
But the time we are looking at here with this movie, this is the beginning of the rise. This is the origins of SNL. Lorne Michaels putting together his pack of wild men and women, young people that are counterculture. They're looking to make a statement, but also just be funny as hell. So before you forget, Ricky, because you think this movie's so forgettable, let's get into instant reactions, right? Leaving the theater. How do you feel about Saturday Night from Jason Reitman?
So we just talked about how I'm not an SNL guy, and I'm walking out of the theater. I think that was clear because I didn't like get everyone was like in our theater. I think for the most part were SNL people, but there were so many little jokes that I just didn't get, and like obviously like there was some hints at some other stuff that was going on, and I just walked out. I was like, all right, that was a fun, chaotic movie, but they didn't give us anything really that we didn't already know. And they tried to like the whole point of this movie is like, oh, like the show, like NBC wants you to fail, like Lorne Michaels to fail, and Lorne Michaels is freaking telling like everyone he's Prometheus, basically. It's just like I was just like, oh my god, Lorne Michaels, I guess you're a TV god. Like, what was the point of this? There really wasn't a point of this movie except saying Lorne Michaels is a god, a him against the world mentality. And I don't even think it did a great job representing that because I'm like, this is the great Lorne Michaels. Like, I don't know. I didn't like this movie.
I always thought Lorne Michaels was an interesting figure because, like we talked about when we did our trailer reactions, I just kind of find him like an Oz type of figure where he's man behind the curtain. We don't know much about him. He starts SNL, he leaves SNL, and he comes back to SNL. You know, he's more of a player's manager. You know, he will always take the side on the creativity, right? He's one of the best recruiters of talent of all time, right? He believed in this project. I think it was a celebration of him because he never gets the limelight. But I also think it's like 50 years, it's 49 years since the start of SNL, obviously 1975, 2024. I think it's like, hey, there have been a lot of SNL movies that have started from skits, but SNL is such a important institution of entertainment that it deserves a movie. And I agree with that. Like it definitely needed a movie. And I think you got to make it sooner rather than later because SNL is becoming more and more um, irrelevant, you know, as the years go by. So I'm okay with this movie happening. And I think they picked the right guy to make it. With Jason Reitman, Ivan Reitman's son, Ivan Reitman, has connections to a lot of SNL cast members, original cast members. It made sense to me. But I found the movie really fun if you're an SNL fan. Like you talked about, there's a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of like allusions, or excuse me, they're alluding to different skits that happen in the future. All right, cast members that get in trouble or cast members that go on to leave SNL. They kind of set those tidbits in for you. So I think if you were an SNL guy, you loved this movie. If you were like us, I found it perfectly enjoyable. You know, this was a fun ride, decently funny, not hilarious, but fast paced, takes its time at some moments. But overall, performances, they give you what you want to see about these characters, right? They give you what you want to see from Belushi, Aykroyd, Chevy Chase. The names go on and on, right? They all get their screen time, their time to shine. I found it perfectly enjoyable, but just also a little bit commercial, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just think it was very like thin, you know, and it was a nice time at the movies. You know, that's what it was. And
Yeah.
it just didn't give us anything deep or anything. Like it was just a nostalgia play. And I like the pace. I like the energy. I do think, you know, it is a TV landmark. Like it is so impactful, not just for obviously TV, but for all these stars like we talked about in the past. Like look what they did for us, like Hollywood, and for the TV or movie going audience forever, right? So impactful, deserves a movie. But like, I don't know. Besides the energy and like the nice score, the tone and pacing I liked, but like I don't know, it's just like for me, it's pretty forgettable.
I was hoping that this was going to be a little more gritty. You know,
Right.
I was hoping that we were going to get a little bit more of like the R-rated or X-rated behind the scenes, like how SNL was so crazy. I was kind of looking for that, and instead it was more about like a really general theme of teamwork, generations coming together to overcome this obstacle, you know, and we're going to get this thing that everyone's against us against the world. We got to pull together amidst this chaos. And I thought the depictions of the characters are just like what you would read from a Wikipedia page, where it's like, okay, you have John Belushi here. He does the drugs. Good, we got it. Check mark. It's Chevy Chase. He is a douche, and you could tell he's gonna leave after this season, even before the first episode. check. Like Lorne Michaels, he is the on the side of the talent at all times, right? Creative visionary, we got that across. Check. It just seems like you can know on a very surface level about all these characters, and you're like you said before, it doesn't really teach you anything new. Although I did find the performances pretty good, although surface level.
Yeah, I thought they were good in like mimics or interpretation, like interpretations or and you know what I'm saying, like
Mimicking, yeah.
mimicking. Yeah, he's just mimicking the people, which I thought were fine, you know.
Impression.
And impressions, that's the word. I will say the one person I thought did a little bit more than that was Chevy Chase's Corey Michael Smith, who I thought that was an interesting, like, little something more deeper, because like he had that conversation with J.K. Simmons, who was like Milton something
Bro,
famous. Yeah, he's like obviously a legend, and it's like his interaction saying, "I'm basically gonna be better than you," and Milton's like, "Bro, like you're not, you're doing this show. Like, what are you talking about?" That was interesting because the whole movie, like the entire time, is like Chevy Chase is that guy. He is like going to be the next Johnny Carson, but then he just had like a awakening, right? But then they didn't do anything with that after that, you know. But that was like that one moment I was like, oh, that's some acting, not actually just mimicking. That's pretty good. But other than that, like Dan Aykroyd, I guess I thought what's his name, Dylan O'Brien was good at Dan Aykroyd, but like shockingly a ladies' man, right?
that was crazy because like Dylan O'Brien, I thought that casting was weird because Dan Aykroyd for us, like we didn't grow up in the 80s, like we weren't there for Ghostbusters, right? We see Dan Aykroyd and we think of like 50 First Dates. You know, we think of him in the I think of him in that movie. I think of him, I don't even know. He was just kind of lost in some comedies that no one cared about in the 2000s. And it kind of shows too. We're going to do this draft of post SNL careers. Like after these people leave SNL, like they're on the upward trajectory, but it doesn't last long, you know? But I thought Dylan O'Brien was like, Dan Aykroyd's not like a good looking guy. Dylan O'Brien kind of is known as that, you know? So that was kind of shocking. But also, Dylan O'Brien was great. He was magnetic on screen. I loved him as Dan Aykroyd, but I didn't. That's one character I didn't know, and they told me something about Dan Aykroyd. That was one of the few.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess just going back overall, it's just like you went through a list of things they threw at you, right? Like from the Wikipedia page. But like that's all. Like the John Belushi contract famously like signed it at the last second. Uh like what's the show about, Lauren? Like what is the show? Like that you have the marriage name going on with Lauren and his wife. Like, oh, what name? But they never like actually do anything with that. The Dan Aykroyd like woman, he's like a womanizer and he's like in a relationship with another cast member, but they don't ever like confront that at all, but they keep hinting at it the entire time. Obviously, we mentioned the Chevy Chase career, the Billy Crystal, literally, like, is he gonna get on stage? Is he not? How many minutes? Like, dude, like that's also like he's famously like did like left SNL and came back, but that was just a hint, nostalgia play. Like they just were surface level the entire time. Like kept poking holes at the
Yeah,
Wikipedia page, like saying, "Oh, we'll do this and we'll do that," but we'll never actually have a story. You know, it's just like you said, a Wikipedia page full of fun facts of the first night of SNL.
it was overstuffed for sure because of all the cast members, and like Jason Reitman seems really concerned with making sure everyone gets represented in this movie. And that's why, to me, that's why it felt commercial and why it's not one I anticipate will be at the Oscars or anything like that. It's a movie that was more about celebrating SNL, you know, rather than actually being like, okay, this is a character study of Lorne Michaels, right? I think a movie could have been grittier or better if maybe they did go into Lorne Michaels, right? And he is the person you hone in on for the majority of the movie. And the other people are secondary, ancillary characters, you know, that are there. They can do their impressions of these iconic figures. And I think Rosie Schuster, played by Rachel Sennett, was one of the best performances of the movie, right? That's a person I don't know. I'm learning more about. I'm sure people that are huge SNL hardcore fans know exactly who she is. I think I think was really electric in the beginning. Great intro to her character. I think this movie worked best when it was like the first 20 minutes. It was the fast pace, the tracking shots, Lauren racing through the studio. It's Rosie also racing through the studio, knowing what to give certain actors, right? Giving them tips, knowing what's going to make the show successful. Seems like a good like business partner to Lauren Michaels. I thought she was really good, and I think really good, especially in the first half.
I completely agree. But we forgot to bring up something. You mentioned the first 20 minutes, and I was thinking back to the first moment on screen for us, and it wasn't the movie.
Oh
Remember
my
in our
god.
yeah. Do you want to like, dude? Like we we had a drone in our theater and people were freaking out. I don't know if you want to explain it. You would do a better job than me.
So there we were sitting, literally opening credits are rolling. Finn
Act theater.
Wolfhard, like Finn Wolfhard is on the screen, and all of a sudden this white object starts floating up and it has a couple red dots on it. And I start freaking out, dude. I started to freak out. And I and someone next to us is a huge SNL fan. He thought he was like literally at NBC Studios. He was like clapping nonstop. He freaked out when he saw when the drone too, and he said like, a freaking drone. Are you serious? But I looked at you. I like got on the edge of my seat. I grabbed the seat in front
Yeah.
of me, and I was ready to duck down. Do you remember that? Like I was
Yeah.
like nervous. I get nervous when I see stuff like that at movie theaters because obviously we know like the history of like things that happen at movies. And I'm like I'm like, dude, I don't know if this thing's gonna start firing stuff at me. I have no idea. I just didn't feel safe at all. Like, who brings a drone? Who throws a shoe? This was ridiculous. Why was that there, Ricky?
Dude, and like the week before when we saw Joker 2, we didn't explain this one on the pod. There's a guy, a packed IMAX theater, and the guy, like during one of the commercials, was like, "Who's pumped for Joker 2?" And like kept saying it. And I'm like, is this guy like gonna do like? And I forgot if you said it or our uncle said it, who was with us, said like off after the show. It's like, oh, like who knows in a movie theater like what's gonna happen, especially before a Joker movie, right? It's just like you never know. Like, and so I understand like your I guess hesitation with it. Like looking in hindsight, I probably should have been like questioning more than just like that's a fun prank. No, like some stuff happens at movie theaters sometimes.
At the beginning of the movie, when Nicole Kidman is telling me like look for the exits, I look for the exits. Like I listen to her. Like I'm paying attention. And those type of things. If I see something abnormal in a theater and there's a lot of people in the theater, I have secondhand thoughts. Like I like back of my mind type of thoughts. And that's where I'm just ready at all times. I was like grabbing the side of the chair and I'm looking at you. I'm like, what's going on? I was gonna like pull you down, dude. I was close to like pulling you down. But luckily, the drone hits the screen and then falls down. We should have watched who grabbed the drone, just like we can identify the guy or girl.
Yeah, or girl. But yeah, that was chaotic, like this movie. And I think this was 2 hours, and it wasn't 90 minutes. Like the movie is about 90 minutes before the first SNL, and this needed to be 90 minutes if it was going to be that thin, right? They were bouncing around. They left the studio to go on the street. There is this weird Prometheus ice skating Belushi and Lorne Michaels commentary or conversation that was just odd and slow and boring. They go to a bar next door and find a writer who I'm sure is famous, but I didn't catch a name. It's just like, I don't know. It was just for me outside that first 20 minutes, I thought it was great to like set up the tone, what this movie is. It kind of just never got it back for me. Like at that same like excitement levels I had, throughout the movie. There's too many slow parts that they left the studio, or I'm kind of, it's just recycling the same point of this movie. It's like, what is the show? Or the Lorne Michaels, like, oh, this is the studio's against you. Just kind of recycling that the entire 2 hours. And I was just kind of sick of it by the end.
Yes, dialogue for me was an issue at points. Like there's a great speech given by Lorne Michaels at the end of the movie that like defines what the show is. It's like what we've been hanging on pins and needles to find out, the question that keeps on being asked throughout the motif for the goddamn movie, right? But then there's also just constant like the studio is against you, right? Like we have like they want you to fail, and then you have Lorne Michaels continuously just being like, right, we're going to prove them wrong. We're going live no matter what. It could be chaotic and we're going to make this thing work. We're going to be successful, right? I believe in this type of thing, like a sports movie type of vibe almost. And even has the big speech, like the Al Pacino at the end of Any Given Sunday, And I think it's powerful, but there's other stuff where it's like a little corny to me. It just doesn't work that well. And another criticism I have is something you brought up. The pace of it, I think, works so well at the beginning. Breakneck, tracking shots, like chaos, drugs in the background,
good
fires
score
going off, lights crashing down, great score to go along with the pacing. But then there's times where the movie slows down, and you have to slow down at some point so you can let the audience breathe. But the scenes that they have where they slow it down, they're just not good scenes. they're just not effective and they're just not entertaining and they take you out of the movie. Like the one where Belushi is skating on the ice rink. I'm just like, it's 11:10. This show goes on at 11:30. Like we're wasting time doing this. I feel like you should have done this earlier. I think there's a place we can do it outside of an ice skating rink, right? It just doesn't seem feasible that they'd be able to go from the ice skating rink, take off the skates. Belushi gets hurt, and then we're gonna go to the studio and then start shooting. Like Lorne Michaels seems like he has way too much to do, and obviously, I just don't think it was accurate. Like what was happening there. So I think that those are my two biggest things I would say. Dialogue a
Big
little
things.
cringy, and then the pacing when it takes its time, the scenes aren't great.
Yeah, and let's just say that was all like historically accurate, right? Let's just say it was. The problem is having it in the movie. You don't have to include everything, and this felt like it was trying to I don't know, like the bag was full, and they're trying to stuff it with all this like nostalgia, and I'm like, dude, like you need to empty out your bag a little bit and just like let it breathe because this movie like just had way too much, like it was trying to do way too much when it didn't have like a soul, in my opinion. Like it didn't have a story. Like it really didn't. So I don't know. This movie kind of upset me, obviously, but then because I guess it upset me to kind of just backtrack on that. It's because like there was a lot of hype around this movie. I love the trailer. The festival hype was big at a TIFF. Was it TIFF or God? Which festival? I forget. It premiered, and there was a lot of hype around it. And it might have been Telluride actually. Yeah, that's definitely Telluride. And it just for me did not live up to that hype.
Didn't live up to the hype. It just maybe there's just some disappointment in you and a little bit in me, just based on what we were hoping this movie was, and then what the execution was on screen. What the final product was. You know, um, I did like it. Like I had those beefs, but I think it was fun to watch like those performances of George Carlin, Matthew Rhys, who I thought was good in
That
this
was good.
movie. And it's also like if you read a Wikipedia page and think about George Carlin, he's going to swear a lot and he's going to be very intelligent and he's going to be also a little bit counterculture. Like, hey, works. Okay. And then I did think I would mention Dylan O'Brien as Aykroyd. One person I wanted to bring up is Tommy Dewey. He plays Michael O'Donoghue, and Michael O'Donoghue was like the head writer of the first couple seasons of SNL, I believe. And he's like really crude, and he is not a cast member, but he gets once again his time to shine in this movie. That's what Reitman's trying to do, like celebrating SNL, like giving people shine that didn't get enough shine. So I think having him, he was one of the people that I thought was legitimately funny in this movie. This movie sometimes it's intense at the beginning, so you're not laughing really. But then Michael O'Donoghue, whenever he was on screen, I found myself smiling, laughing. I think him and Chevy Chase were my favorite performers, honestly, in this.
Yeah, like
And
I know
Rachel.
like there's beef with like the dialogue and some of the important scenes, but I would say like when it's just the quick quip, like the clever quips, and the quick like jabs at people. That's like was like very enjoyable. And I forget what's his name again? Michael something
Dewey.
and yeah, or that character was like awesome at that. I thought he was great in that. And what's his with Tommy Dewey? Is Michael Dewey? What's his name again? The actor?
I believe it was Michael Dewey that I
Okay.
had.
Just like really good. Like really good, quick dialogue. Like always that banter.
Tommy Dewey, Michael O'Donoghue.
Michael Donoghue. Yeah, just really good. I really enjoyed that.
And looking at, we had Nicholas Braun. We love Nicholas Braun. We love Succession, right? He was playing Jim Henson, and he was playing Andy Kaufman. There's a scene here where Andy Kaufman kind of like brings the cast of SNL together, and like the execs like start to believe in the show because of like an Andy Kaufman, like him doing the "Here I go," like whatever, once again to save the day, like when he's doing like the whole thing with his
Iconic,
hand
yeah.
and lip singing it. I found it kind of weird that Andy Kaufman is saving the show because like he's not SNL. Like he's someone that performed on SNL, but like he's not like a core cast member. I just thought that was weird decision because that scene obviously didn't happen, right? Where everything was chaotic and he just starts to practice in front of everybody and calms everyone's nerves. I just found that was an interesting choice because it should be an SNL person that probably like breaks the tension.
Yeah, and like again, this is trying to be historically accurate. Did that actually happen? That seems way too corny and like random that all these studio execs would be right there. Whole cast is right. It's just like the coincidence is just like no way, like no possible way that happened. And I think this movie was really focused on making it historically accurate and trying to, like I said, jam pack everything in. So I question that. But that reminds me. So after the show, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go down a YouTube rabbit hole on SNL. I'm gonna try
Yeah.
to track down this first episode, and I couldn't. You had to pay for it, and I was like, I'm not. But I saw a bunch of clips from the first episode. There was like the end of this movie was the first clip of Saturday Night, which was the Wolverines like English translation with John Belushi. I rewatched that. I rewatched a bunch of season 1. Dude, that show was not funny. I would have canceled that show.
I went on YouTube and I watched some season 1 clips and I thought it was funny. I think one that I
Oh,
watched that I found that was very I don't know, felt like relevant today is, you see the Star Trek one with John Belushi?
that's a good one. That's a good one.
That's a
But
great one. And that when I watch that, I'm like, wow, I see like Belushi, the talent that he has, you know, like him, like usually you think of him as like a wacky, like drunk slob, but then to see him clean it up and just like channel William Shatner, I'm like, wow, he's actually killing this and he's not breaking at all. And Chevy Chase, it's like basically him and Chevy Chase, and Chevy Chase is Spock looking ridiculous with like the
yeah.
eyebrows and the ears. That's the one that's one that I watched that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, but like there was a couple, like I was trying to check out like the first episode and it's just like trying to find those clips. Like there's in the movie, there's a clip of Dan Aykroyd like switching roles, like the women are the construction workers and he's like the pawn, like like people like getting sexualized or whatever. I rewatched that clip, didn't think it was funny. There was the bee, like famous like John Belushi like in this movie was like I don't want to be a bee. I rewatched that and I didn't think that was funny. Like looking for the pollen. Like I didn't think that was funny. Weird ending to that. And there's a bunch of clips I thought were just huge misses that weren't funny. But yeah, there are some that are good, and mostly the ones that I thought were good were with Chevy Chase or John Belushi.
Yeah, like
Unsurprisingly,
the samurai sword is a classic,
classic.
like the cheeseburger classic, those type of ones. I feel like when we were kids, we didn't find that funny either because I don't know, we weren't alive when they came out. This was a show that was a phenomenon when it came out. So it's like those live on in legendary form where it's like your parents, your grandparents pass those down, they show you that and they crack up when they see it because it brings them back to a different time. And for us, we're like, this isn't funny at all. A lot of the SNL skits now, they're trying to get as many laughs as possible, but it seems like the skits back then, they were waiting on one punchline to really deliver, right? And there's actually acting going on. Like that's where it's like when I'm watching this, I see legitimately people taking it seriously. Like when I watch John Belushi in those skits, I'm like, I could see a career for him as a comedic actor and dramatic actor beyond just SNL. And I
Yeah,
watch
he's
people
in a
today,
Spielberg movie.
and I watch people on SNL today. I'm like, I can't see these people like in something serious. I think these people aren't even taking SNL seriously. Like it seemed like it was just a little bit different back then.
Yeah, that like in the movie they allude to that. Like, John Belushi's like, I'm a serious actor.
Yeah.
Like this isn't a joke for me. Like this is like I like that was actually I did like that because it connects to what you were just saying. So I thought I did grab a little bit like at a whole I grabbed a little bit onto that.
Like even when I'm looking at I watched The Godfather Therapy with with Belushi playing
Yeah,
Marlon Brando, like
that was
playing
good.
Vito Corleone. I'm like, damn, this guy is good, dude. This guy is good. Uh, so yeah, that's gone too soon, and we'll talk about him with our draft coming up. But I think it's time to get to scores. Ricky Flex, what do you give Saturday night?
55 out of 100.
Okay, I'm a 68. Ricky Flex, wow, I did not see that
Told you,
coming.
I didn't really like it. Like I enjoyed my time at the theater, but that's 2 hours, and after that, I'm not gonna be thinking about this movie. I'm just not. It was fine. The movie was fine.
And before we leave the review, just shout out Rachel Sennett as Rosie Schuster, right?
She's
She did
great.
she got arrested last week. Do you see that?
I did see that found. I watched her on Fallon, of course. You gotta follow the hometown, kid.
Yeah, just a legendary figure from Simsbury, Connecticut, going on to do big things. Props to Rachel Sennett, one of the best performers of the movie, right? We move,
We
right?
move.
Come on the pod.